I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. And given that absence of the mayor and council president, I'd like a motion to appoint a chair of the meeting.
I will move to approve Nico as the chair for tonight's meeting for council.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Can we just do a voice vote or do we need to do a roll call?
Yeah, we'll do a roll
call. Okay. Councillor Caceres.
Aye.
Councillor Ecclestone.
Aye.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Sini.
Aye.
Councillor Wick.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All righty, thank you guys. We'll go ahead and get moving along here. Next, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we got a first and a second. Vote by roll call.
Councillor Caceres.
Aye.
Councillor Ecclestone.
Aye.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Sini.
Aye.
Councillor Wick.
Aye. Motion
passes.
All righty, and up next we have presentations, proclamations, and visitors. We got a presentation from regarding our water system from our engineer from West Tech Engineering, Chris Brugado.
Yeah, and I'll kind of cue this up just a little bit. This is just to provide some updated information to start bringing council's focus and perspective into the tasks that we have ahead of us. And we'll be working, and we have been working, but we'll continue to work towards getting some potable water infrastructure installed. And we wanted to make sure that we provided you this background between now and the next 2 or 3 months. This will probably be, we'll be getting more and more into this detail, and it's a lot of information to digest into one meeting. So we're breaking it up into these sound bites to start building that foundation. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris, and you can just walk through your presentation.
Okay, can you folks hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
You.
Okay, good. So yeah, again, my name is Chris Brugado. I'm with West Tech Engineering. We're the city's engineer of record. We're working on several projects for the city, but over the last several months, we've been working on various tasks related to improving the some preliminary work that will lead into some substantial improvements to the city's water system. And so I've been asked to provide you folks with a status update of that. So I have some slides I'll go through, and then we can try to answer any questions you have at the end. So how does this work? There we go. Okay. So just some background information. The city completed a water master plan in 2015, and that master plan identified several kind of high priority projects. The master plans are kind of, just high level evaluations that get us pointed in the right direction. But as we move toward implementing the improvements, things can kind of be refined and changed a little bit and fine-tuned, and that's pretty normal. So there's kind of 4 different projects that we've been working on. So you can just think of these as 4 different work tasks. There's some water rights management work that the city needed to do. There's the city's water system is operating near its design capacity. So we did an evaluation to look at, what the city's options are for finding more water. That evaluation showed the best new approach was actually 2 new water supply wells. And so we're going to be beginning that work in the near future. And then the water master plan also recommended a new water storage tank and booster pump station. So on these next series of slides, I'll just go through each of these 4 kind of work items and provide an update. For those of you who aren't familiar with water rights, that's what this slide is, just kind of a quick introduction. In the state of Oregon, the state owns all the water, and it issues water rights certificates that authorizes the use of the state's water to, entities that want to use it. So if you want to obtain a new water rights, there's a process. You prepare an application, you submit it to the Water Resources Department, the Oregon State Water Resources Department. If they approve your application, they issue a permit, and the permit will have conditions in it about how much water you can use, how long you have to develop the water right. If you don't develop it in time, the permit expires. And once you have the permit, then you build the infrastructure you need. Like, let's say you get a permit to drill a well, then you drill the well, do some testing, develop the well, start using it. And once you're using that water, you submit a claim of beneficial use, which documents to the state that you are using the water that you are permitted to use. And then they issue a certificate. And a water rights certificate is the best water rights position you can be in. You would like to have all your water rights certificated. It's less susceptible to legal challenges, regulatory changes, that sort of thing. So anything prior to the certificate stage is less solid, I guess, is the way I would put it. So that's for new water rights. It's a similar process for making changes to existing water rights. So you can make changes to existing water rights. Like, let's say you have a water right for a well and you want to drill a second well to withdraw water under that same water right. You can do that. There's conditions. You can't take out more water than the right allows, but you could add a second well as another point of diversion. And so you apply to change the water right. They issue what they call a transfer order, which is kind of like the permit. And then once you build the infrastructure you need to achieve what you asked to do, then you submit another claim, and then they issue a new certificate that replaces the old certificate. So again, what you want is certificates. And you had a couple water rights that were not in the certificate, that were not certificated, okay? So we'll talk about those. One was the tower well. The city applied for and obtained a transfer order to drill the well. The well was drilled and developed under the transfer order. The well is now in use, and the city just hadn't gotten around to submitting the claim of beneficial use. So that was prepared and submitted this last summer. We expect to get the certificate to hear if there's any issues, or get a certificate by the end of this year or early next year. The other water rights action was related to the Boone Park church well water right. That water right is currently in the permit stage. The city did submit a claim of beneficial use in June of 19, but apparently it was missing some information and it was being held up at Water Resources Department. So the city prepared an addendum to the claim that was submitted in this last summer that included the missing information, and we expect to get some feedback from Water Resources again by the end of this year or early in 2021. So that was the water rights work that's been done. It's basically done. The city's done their part. We're waiting for feedback from the state. So the next task was, what are some water supply options for the city? And it's important to understand that there's all the groundwater that's available in the vicinity of Aumsville is already spoken for. Okay, if you applied for a new groundwater permit, it would be denied because that water is all being used. So that creates some challenges. And so what are your other options? We identified 3 options, and they go from best to worst here. The best option is this option 1, which is just make use of the city's existing water rights. The city actually has about 400 gallons a minute of excess water rights. That's rights that you have on paper but aren't able to pump, okay? And so you can, again, apply for a transfer, add some new wells under those water rights, and voila, you've increased your water supply. 400 gallons a minute is substantial. The city's existing production capacity is about 700 gallons a minute. So this is a 60% increase. So that's a big jump in the city's water supply. So to let the cat out of the bag, this is the recommended option 1. But it's probably important for the city to understand what the next options are. Okay, so we're going to do option 1 first. But moving forward, the city needs to kind of be aware of what the other options are. This probably the second best option, if you can pull it off, is to purchase existing groundwater rights and transfer those rights to the city. Okay, and so we did a little study to look around the area and see what water rights were available. There were 12 groundwater rights that were in a reasonable proximity to the city. A lot of these are kind of small and wouldn't amount to a whole lot, but there's 2 that are relatively large. And so it would be wise for the city to reach out to these property owners to see if there's some interest there in selling these water rights. And some cities have even gone so far as to purchase the property, strip off the water rights, and sell the property. Okay, so that's something that can be done as well. After that, the next best option is probably to purchase surface water from the Santiam Water Control District and construct a surface water treatment plant. That is a very, very long-term thing that the city may need to do, or in other words, it wouldn't be needed for quite a while. The surface water treatment plant is substantially more complicated than what the city has today. They're costly, more challenging to operate. They're more heavily regulated than what the city has today. So it's not a great option, but it is an option. So of these, again, we're in the near term, i.e. the next few years, we're going to be pursuing option 1, which is drill a couple new wells to make use of the city's existing water rights. Okay, so that's what this slide is. So the question is then, well, where do you drill these wells? So we did a well siting study to look, at the aquifer characteristics in the area, proximity to city, property ownership, identified a number of sites that went through a kind of a ranking system. And the best site we all believe is Mill Creek Park and or Boone Park. So that kind of southwestern corner of the city where the city owns those park properties. There's already wells there. We think we can drill 2 new wells there, and that won't interfere with the existing wells. There is another privately owned well nearby that may create some complications, but we think there's some options in dealing with that. Maybe the city may be able to purchase the property or provide a water service to those owners. We are just now sort of getting started on the next steps for developing these 2 new wells. And then the final project is the water storage tank and booster pump station. We think the most cost-effective location for a new tank is adjacent to the city's existing ground storage tank. And that's because all of the wells in the city pump to that centralized location where the water is treated. Okay, if you locate the tank somewhere else, there's a bunch of additional infrastructure that would need to be built that doesn't have to be built if you site the tank adjacent to the existing tank. Unfortunately, that existing property is not quite large enough for 2 tanks. So the city's been working with the adjacent landowner to do a lot line adjustment. I believe there's an agreement, kind of a handshake agreement in place at this time. And the city's working to formalize that agreement and get the lot line adjustment paperwork started. Once that's done, we can start moving into design for the new tank and the booster pump station at that site. There's a little bit of water system modeling that we need to do to verify that location is the best choice for the city. The water master plan recommended the tank site in the northwest corner of the city for reasons I'm not totally sure why, but that has problems up there. We think we can move the water tank near the existing tank site and it should be okay, but we need to do a little bit of modeling to verify some of the recommendations in the water master plan. And we'll do that here in the near future. So that's really it. So to summarize, the water rights management work is basically done. The city's done what the city needs to do, and we're waiting for responses from the state. We're getting started on 2 new wells that'll be located at Boone Park or Mill Creek Park or both. Those wells will increase the water supply capacity by 60%, which is substantial. And then the city's working on construction of a new ground storage tank and booster pump station that will most likely be sited adjacent to the existing ground storage tank. Regarding timing, this stuff is not going to happen next year. In order to drill the 2 new wells, the city has to apply for a water rights transfer to add those 2 new wells under their existing water rights. That application won't take long to prepare, but Water Resources Department is fairly slow at reviewing those. And so based on past experience, we think it's 18 to 24 months before you get approval to drill those 2 new wells, and so then the sequence is you get the transfer, that's 18 to 24 months. Then you drill the wells and you do some test pumping. When you're drilling wells, you have a pretty good idea what you're going to get yield wise, but you don't really know. And so you do some test pumping before you actually specify the pump and the piping and the control system. So once the wells are drilled and test pumped, we can then prepare design documents for the mechanical infrastructure. That has to be approved by the health division. So there's a permitting process and then construction will start. So this whole sequence doesn't start until Water Resources approves the transfer application. So it's going to take some time before this is all done, but so that's just kind of heads up on that. And that's really all I had. I can try to answer whatever questions you have.
I'll just jump in a little bit and throw just a tad bit more information in there. One is, as you can tell, we're really trying to take a very planned approach, an organized approach on how we're approaching the infrastructure needs as well as the future water rights. Some of the work that we're doing also is on the finance side. So as you know, we have $2.8 million of grant funding. And we'll also be needing about another $1.2 million just to finish the projects that we outlined there in the reservoir and or the new wells, at least how we see the budget today. Now, as you know, that sometimes there's things that can change that one way or the other. And so we're simultaneously working on that. But right now, Chris is working on the modeling to confirm the location. Simultaneously, we're working on a purchase and sale agreement for the property that we need. And I believe we've already discussed that we could probably move forward with the reservoir project regardless of the wells. Isn't that right, Chris? We can do some work on the reservoir.
I think so, yeah. And there's a little bit of risk there, but it's not great. And we can talk about that. But Yeah, there is the opportunity to separate those and do them as two parallel work efforts, which would speed things up.
Yeah. And so we're going to continue to work towards that, and we'll continue to work towards the water right work. So all of this is happening behind the scenes, and it is, it does consume time, but we're putting all those pieces together so that once we're ready to pull the trigger, we can move these projects forward.
All right, council have any specific questions? Bring up.
I think I'm good.
I did have one question, just for public knowledge and just, say if there's somebody that later on watches this video, Mr. John Q. Public, what process does it go into for looking for sites that have water for potential drilling? Like what are some sort of things that we seek when we're looking for potential places to maybe drill for a well?
So you're talking about a well, not necessarily water, right?
Well, like a water source, I guess.
The water
'cause
source.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we, if council remembers, we did a contract with a consultant, GIS, I believe was the name of their company. Is that right, Chris?
It's GSI, but
GSI, okay.
Yeah.
I knew I had that acronym.
It's in there.
Got it close.
And one of the things that they did was they did a kind of that aquifer study for us. They also helped work on some of our water right work that we were doing, but it basically based on just the areas that were available throughout the city where they thought the best opportunity for us to get a good potential draw of water based on the aquifer. They ranked these sites, and then we took that ranking, and it basically boiled down to the two city parks would be the best location. There were other locations that were potentially good sites, but each of them had some sort of additional layer or requirement. And they certainly still are viable alternative sites, but we think the two primary sites are the parks. Did I reflect that correctly, Chris?
yeah, I think, the criteria are land that the city owns, so you don't have to buy the land. And then aquifer thickness is kind of the other one. There's well logs are public information that are available at Water Resources Department site. So you can look at all the well logs in the area and get a sense for how thick the aquifer is. And actually, it's not hard to understand, but along Mill Creek, the aquifer is the thickest. And so those parks are along Mill Creek, and that's one of the reasons they're attractive.
And we have to be specific to a certain aquifer as well. That's with the 400 gallons per minute. We're set to a certain the locations as well.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
All righty. We'll be moving on next to public comment. We have any visitors? We have no visitors according to Colleen. And just point of clarification, Ron, did we want to address the correspondence we got maybe under correspondence perhaps? No, we did have a written note to council, and I just want to make sure we.
Yeah, and I can just, do you want to do it now? I can do it now, or we can do it under correspondence. It's up to you, Chair.
We can probably go ahead and just do it under correspondence.
Okay.
All right, so no public comment, and we don't have any visitors, I believe. Is that right? All right, moving right along, consent agenda. Everybody have a chance to go over the minutes for the last meeting for October 25th? All right, can I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Have a vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
motion passes.
All righty, we'll move right along here. There's no public hearing this evening, no old business, and we do have some items to discuss under new business. First one being resolution number 2021, a resolution establishing updated cities fees and public records information request policy. Want to go over that, Ron?
Yeah, I'll go over this. If council recalls, a couple of months ago, we came to you with some policy changes to our community center and park rentals. Council approved those with a motion, and we've put those policies in place. One of the things that we have in our city, along with each individual policy, is a master fee schedule where we roll all of those fees for services that have been approved through the different programs. And what we said is we'd come back at a later time and update that. Well, we've got it updated, so we're bringing it back. Every time we go through that, we also review to see if there's anything that we're missing. And that's just our constant improvement strategy towards the city services that we do. And so there's a couple of things that you'll notice that we're suggesting to change in here. One is the park rental fees, and I think that's on page 3. And that basically just memorializes what we agreed to when we adjusted those park spaces. And then there's a couple of other things. I think if you look on page 5, one of the things that we'd like to add is a call out fee. Occasionally what will happen is on the weekends, we will get a new service connection that didn't get in on Friday that wants their water turned on because they're moving in or moving out, something like that. And they'll want to call in city staff. Well, it's time and a half for us. It's an hour minimum call. That's part of our employee agreement with our employees that are on call during the weekends. And so we need to have the authority to recoup that money when we respond to those calls. We don't want to do that for free and without something on our master fee schedule. It's kind of hard after the fact. So we wanted to include that in there, and that's a service. So if they called the after hours number or the dispatch number to call somebody out, they would be informed, yeah, we can come out, but it's going to cost you $85. And then our type A permits, if you know, we've changed our type A, type B permits, and we really don't have anything memorialized anywhere. So we wanted to go ahead and just say in our fee schedule that those are actual costs. We're still working on the type A permit to get that updated now that we've updated the type B permit with the Public Works design standards and the new fees associated with that. And so we'll probably have a resolution coming forward between now and the end of the year, but we just wanted to memorialize, there's certain cases in a type A permit where we have to recoup cost associated with that. And that's especially if we have a lot of staff time or engineering cost. Now, a lot of our type A permit items like sheds and fences and landscaping, we do that as just a service to the resident. But there's some scenarios where we'll issue a type A permit for a business related to development, and it'll eat up dozens of hours of our consultants, our engineers, sometimes city attorneys. And right now, we really don't have a way to recoup that. So we end up spending a lot of city money
Eating it.
because they're not public. If it's not public infrastructure, meaning a water line or a street or a sidewalk or something of that nature, it doesn't trigger the type B. So we just want to recoup our costs on that. And I think that's really about it in there. There are just some minor changes. Oh, I think there was one other change. There was that I'll point out, in our community center rental agreements on our forms, we've always charged, I want to say it was $60 or $65 an hour should somebody renting the community center require police security. But in our fee schedule, we still had $25 an hour from years and years ago. And it actually costs us closer to $68, $70, depending on the officer that we have do that. And it doesn't really come up. As a matter of fact, I don't know that since I've been here, it's ever come up. But since it's in the fee schedule, we wanted to make it consistent with what our fee charges are. In the rules that we have for our community center rental, if you have over 50 people and it's going to be like a party or something of that, the city does have the option to require you to have an officer present. Like I say, I've been here for 5.5 years and I don't think we've ever required it, but it is in the contract. So, and so really those are the changes. If council is fine with those, we'd appreciate support in approving those.
All righty, thank you for your report, Ron. I think those are, reasonable requests, and I think they're definitely needed. Did council have any questions for Ron regarding the fee schedule update? All right, hearing no questions, do I have a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 2021, updating the city services fees and public records information request policy as presented by staff.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving right along. To new business B, affidavit for partial diminution of a water right certificate.
Yeah, and actually Matt's the lead on this, but I'll give a quick overview, and then if I get something wrong, Matt can correct me on this. But basically, the original parcel that made up Mill Creek Park was 6.5 acres roughly. There was a well, it was associated with an adjacent residential piece of property, and there's a well located on that residential piece of property. The park, and it was an irrigation well. The park was donated to the city. I believe it's 5 acres of that property was donated to the city. And so the irrigation right hasn't actually really been used, but because the city owns the property, we're part owner of that irrigation right. We don't irrigate the park using the well. We never have. We use a irrigation right from the San Am Water Control District out of the creek. And they're just cleaning up, they're doing some of the work to clean up their water right portfolio. And so this was a request that came from them. And we did check with our consultants, which I attached that email just so that you had that explanation. Basically, it just is, we're just signing away that we don't use that for irrigation, and that it could be, for a better term, a lower priority in the water right portfolio than their rights. Does that sound about right to you, Matt?
Yeah, it's basically, we could still use that well to irrigate, but it wouldn't be our primary source for the park. It never has been. We've always used the San Am Water Control District water out of Mill Creek Park. So it also kind of helped water right a little bit on our end. That was one of the water rights Chris was talking about near Mill Creek Park. That could be an issue when we go ahead and drill a well there. So if we did impact that well, we would be impacting a secondary source that pretty much belongs to us, or 5 acres. I think it's 5.25 acres out of the 6 acres that it's used to irrigate with. So just kind of cleaning up stuff for the Santiam Water Control District. If we don't do it, we wouldn't be able to use the water from the Santiam Water Control District, which then we'd have to use city water to irrigate the park with. So
basically what we're asking for is authorization to sign the demolition order.
All righty. Council have any questions for either Ron or Matt? All righty. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the affidavit for partial diminution of a water rights certificate provided by Santiam Water Control District.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All righty. Moving on to item C of new business, the farm lease transfer for Bunker's Place.
And so I'll go ahead and lead the staff report on this again. So if council recalls, a few years ago, we executed a new lease with Butler Farms. This is for the 85 acres of property that the city has for irrigating with our effluent from our treatment facility. And so it's in the best interest of the city to have some sort of farming operation actively going on out there, because it allows us to use up more water. And so Butler Farms sent a request to the city to have the lease transferred. That was allowed in our original lease per their request. And so we're just wanting to execute that transfer tonight, and that is basically going to change the leaseholder from Butler Farms LLC to Tim Bilenberg. And if the council's okay with that, we'll get that executed. And then I think that we'll come back later with some more discussion, probably after the first of the year, on long-term outlook for that location.
All righty. Thank you, Ron. Council have any questions for Ron regarding this request? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the lease transfer from Butler Farms LLC to Tim Bilenberg for the remainder of the current lease ending in 2022.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All righty, your report, Ron.
All right, I just have a short verbal report. I will point to the Public Works report and the police report in your packet. It is No Shave November. This is the season where we also do a lot of our community programs. So we are engaged, I think, in our toy drive. That's up and running, and we're, through our events planning committee, we are planning our Christmas in the Park event, albeit we're going to try to look for ways to make sure that we keep minimum in-person contact or close distance contact down if we can. But we have, all accounts, we have a great event planned. If anybody wants to engage me on details of that, we also have our event planning committee, which I think we're going to meet one more time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
First week
And-
of December.
Okay, great. But I think we've assigned jobs and everybody's busy. And we'll get moving on that. We also do the Santa visits the same day, where Santa Claus goes around the community with treat bags. And we're working on that. We'll have that all prepared as normal. And we're just hoping to have a good event. The fire station, fire district station, because they have an indoor facility typically, they're not going to do the indoor portion of their event, but they're going to participate with us on the outdoor Santa visits and, maybe even down at the park. And then we're going to try to offer a little bit more food choices down there, because typically the fire district would offer food as a fundraiser. And we just thought we'd offer a little extra food down there. So we're thinking of hot dogs to go with the soup down there. So
Be awesome.
yeah. And so we're just preparing for that, wrapping up the years with the projects and continuing to work on all the great things we have ahead. I did have a meeting this last week with our regional solutions team, and I was actually glad to see them organize the regional solution meetings in each community. And they did those online. Now in the past, they've done like a region meeting. But it was really great because I got all the team members to myself for an hour and a half. And we talked about these water projects. So, you get members from DEQ and ODOT and Water Resources and Business Oregon and USDA. They're all on one great little call. And so we went through our priority projects and what we're trying to do. And so it was just great to have everybody corralled in one space. And we talked everything from our public works facility, financing to, this first round of water projects that we're going to have a little stopgap financing that we'll have to do there. So it was a good meeting. But other than that, we're just continuing to do the business. We're working with people every day on projects, and I think it's going really well.
A little bit of a question, Ron. I know obviously things are in a crazy place, to say it the least, politically in Washington right now. That's probably putting it nicer than what it really is. But have we heard anything from either staff or from Representative Schrader's office regarding potential, dipping into whatever funds that we may get from the American Infrastructure Bill?
Well, there's lots of things. There's lots of moving parts. So we received the $2.8 million from the ARP funding, the last round of funding that went through the state. And we also received almost $1 million in direct allocations from the original rescue plan. And so I emailed, based on the passage of the infrastructure bill, which we lobbied specifically for our project in that bill with Wyden and Representative Schrader's office, and we're pretty active in a lot of the roundtable meetings with those folks. So I emailed their staff today to ask if they knew the details of the infrastructure plan. I'm not sure that if they're widely known. I mean, there's some elements in there that have been thrown out in the news media, but I haven't actually got my hands on a copy of exactly what it funds. So I went ahead and asked their folks today if they could provide some of that feedback to us. If I hear anything, I'll shoot off an email.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's difficult. I know people have referenced in the past it being similar to, spaghetti, kind of, it gets to the point where you kind of throw something at the wall and kind of see what sticks. And then if that's what passes, then that's what you have to work with. So, all right. Thank you, Ron. So as mentioned before, the Chief Schmidt's report, as well as Public Works Director Osley's report, are in the packet for your review. We'll move along to council reports. Any councilors have anything to report?
No.
The one thing I've got is I did get your email, Ron, regarding volunteering my time with the holiday event, and I'm more than happy to do so.
Okay. You and I will get together then offline and we can just talk about process. Okay.
Certainly, yeah. No, we'll chat. That's it from me. Next up, go to the order. Do we have any other business that may come before the council this time? Any other? All right, guess we'll move along to correspondence.
Yeah, so council got a correspondence email this week simply because the letter was addressed to the council. And so if somebody sends correspondence to the city, if it's just to the city or to myself, we'll typically deal with those. But if it's the council, we send a copy to you guys. We don't put them in the packet unless there's some business action item we're asking council to do. In this particular case, the correspondence that you got was related to some land use and nuisance ordinance enforcement issues. And we've been working with the property owner to try to get those issues fixed. And the big point that the property owner was making in that letter was that a permit was not required, or he was told a permit wasn't required. And so he installed a driveway. And a permit typically would be required under a type A permit, but even if a permit was not required, that doesn't alleviate the property owner from building something to our standards.
Right.
And in this particular case, the project that he built did not meet the Public Works design standards. And so what we did was we tried to come up with some fixes for him that would not create the hazard that the Public Works design standards are supposed to address without having to tear out the project that he has done. And so he basically doesn't want to have to do any of the fixes, but under our codes, he really has to either take the project out and get a permit and get it permitted correctly, or he has to comply with one of the remedies that we've came up with. And the big issue is the wings of the sidewalk go up into his driveway like this. And I think you're familiar with that throughout the city. And what happens is people will install driveways adjacent to their existing driveways. But what also happens is if they don't meet our standard, and what our standard would require is them to tear out the sidewalk and the approach where the wings are and to move that out past the new driveway. That's what would happen if we were permitting it to begin with. That would probably be our recommendation. One of our fixes to stop people from backing over the sidewalks, and what happens is if they back over the sidewalks and the curbs, instead of having the wings or the ramp to go down, they bust up the curbs, and then they just become infrastructure that we have to repair all the time. And in this particular case, that's been occurring on this location. So one of the fixes that we came up with that's in our standards is if they can't expand the wing, then we basically have them do a cut so that the new driveway doesn't come all the way out to the sidewalk. And then we have them put some bushes in that 2 feet cut area. And that serves for a couple of purposes. One, it replaces the landscaping that was taken up by the new driveway, which under our code, if they remove the landscaping, they have to replace it. And it doesn't replace it one-to-one, but it provides the benefit of landscaping by breaking up the concrete. But more importantly, what it does is it prevents vehicles from backing over our curb. And that's what we're trying to do. And he wasn't happy with those remedies, and that was the purpose of the correspondence. But he didn't put contact information in there. I'm trying to get a mailing address so I can formally respond to his request.
Appreciate the information there, because I don't know if it was my phone or maybe just the quality of the PDF. I had a challenge reading his handwriting, and that might have been, I'm sure, some credence to what was going on, but yeah, I'm glad you shed a little light on that.
Yeah, and we work with a number of people that will contact us in the city, and under this new type A permit that we've been out doing, we've been proactive because we've been trying to get out and talk to folks before they do something that doesn't meet our code. And unfortunately, what happens in a lot of these cases that, you know, when you get a correspondence like this, you may not be aware of. In a lot of these cases, we've spoken to the residents before they installed the improvement, and then they install the improvement without a permit, even though we told them they had to have a permit, and then they do it incorrectly. And then we try to work with them as much as we can, but at some point it goes from us working with them to a compliance issue if we can't get them to make changes. So, and we've got to stay consistent because it's really difficult for us to somehow magically make it happen for the neighbor across the street.
Right.
And so we try to stay pretty adamant about it, but there's probably at any one time a dozen active enforcement issues. And as soon as we resolve some, there's more.
Yeah.
Constant game of whack-a-mole, right? All right. Thank you, Ron. We have no executive session this evening, so there's no other business. We will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:57.